Okay, everyone, good morning and good afternoon for all of you, and welcome to this third Dialogue of Continents. This is an annual conference that we have been co-hosting with the Hamburg Institute for International Economics and the Reinventing Bretton Woods Committee. It's a great pleasure to welcome different speakers from all around the world. I think that's the purpose of the Dialogue of Continents. And indeed, we are meeting today in the age of major uncertainties. I'm pretty sure all of you have been either watching here the news about yesterday US elections. This is still a lot of uncertainties happening at this moment in that front that will have major ramifications about the future of global governance, about the future of democracy and the global economy. It's going to be the first time that we are organizing this forum in terms of a digital format. It will be a 3-day series of webinars that will bring together many experts from around the world and policymakers that will cover a variety of sessions from the new way of thinking about macroeconomic policy in terms of fiscal policy, monetary policy, but looking also at the new geopolitical order. And it is very clear from all of us that this is a crisis that really transforms the world. This is, I believe, the worst crisis since the Great Depressions, and it will take significant imagination for all of us and in the policy front at the national and the international level to recover and to shift to the post-COVID-19 world. What is clear, even we are in a world of uncertainties, is that global economy is going to be contracted by -4%, and some countries will be hit harder. This is clear, interesting that except China, where output would be expecting to exceed the 2019 level, most of the countries will be dealing with major uncertainties. There will be a lot of major scaring and collapse of small and medium companies. There will be a loss of skills, and there will be a big ramification for long-term productivity. And most of the countries in the world will emerge with higher deficit. We don't know also in this stage of uncertainties whether a vaccine will be available and if this pandemic will be fully under control. We don't know also how bad the impact of the pandemic will be on trade policies, and on international relations. What might the world after the pandemic will look like? I think this is clearly, we don't know. This is, I think, what we need to say to everyone here. What we don't know is how far will be the breakdown of international relations. Are we going to have a type of systemic hostility between the US and China? And where will Europe fit in this new global governance structure? How much the integrated global economy will survive? And will this crisis accelerate or leave much of the world with inadequate progress toward managing the climate and other global environmental challenges? So yes, we have to be very modest about how this post-COVID-19 world will look like. But I hope over the last 3 days, what we were trying to do with our colleagues here and with our different partners is really to try to bring together a variety of experts, really to showcase not only the current strategy and the current difficulties that we are all facing, but also to start thinking about the post-COVID-19. Many thanks for all of you for joining, and I appreciate your participations, even if it's on the digital format. I know we miss, the face-to-face meeting, and the thing that we have been doing with all of you for many years, but I hope also that next year, there will be a time where we will be able to meet again in a different format and to rebuild, what is the most important is humanity. So let me give now the floor to my co-host and colleague, Henning Vöpel, who is the director and the CEO of the Hamburg Institute of International Economics. And after we will kick off the sessions one that will be sharing by Piroska Nagy-Mohácsi. She's the chair and the interim director at the Institute for Global Affairs at the London School of Economics. Piroska attended one of our last sessions 2 years ago in Paris. And I did remember, Piroska, that in fact you were sharing the first session also. But thanks, Piroska. Let me give you now the floor to Henning. Henning, thank you.
Thank you very much, Marc. And good morning and welcome to all the participants from Hamburg. My name is Henning Vöpel. I'm a director of the Hamburg Institute of International Economics. And I don't want to add so many words to what Marc have already said. So because we don't want to waste so much time, because we have a great agenda and so many wonderful speakers. And I'm really happy that we managed to continue this important dialogue of continents. So this is the fourth time or the third time in a row we were able to bring this on stage. And I think we can further develop this great platform to continue the dialogue. And well, that's what you have already mentioned, Marc, that we created a lot of change and uncertainties. And we entitled the conference this year by the power of imagination. And I think that is very important, that we have also the opportunity to reimagine the global economy, facing all the uncertainties, to create a common path towards cooperation and change and progress. And that's why we decided to continue, and we wanted to bring also, under the condition of a pandemic, this conference on stage. And I'm very happy that we managed to do that. So, and well, we have a great agenda, as I said in the beginning. And so we are very much looking forward to discussing extremely important topics with all of you. And you're invited to join us for the next 3 days and to discuss some extremely important topics and issues. So again, welcome to this conference. And this is where I want to hand over to Mr. Kim. So thanks a lot, and we will have a great conference the next 3 days. Thank you very much.
Can I give you the floor so you can introduce our speakers, and we will kick off after with Mr. Kim. Piroska, please.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Marc, for inviting, putting this together with Henning and having me here. It's a great pleasure. We have a phenomenal panel here to look at what is our job now, to look at the global economic and social consequences of the COVID crisis. I will call on the speakers and introduce very briefly the website of the conference has a beautiful setup and very clear and full complete description of the rich and impressive CVs of our speakers. So I will just name you and introduce you very briefly so that we can listen to what you want to say. So our first speaker is Mr. Kim Heungchong. He is the president of the Korean Institute of International Economic Policy, KIEP in abbreviation. In addition to this important post, he has held various important government positions, so bringing in a very rich experience. Mr. Kim, the floor is yours. And let me remind you, I will be the timekeeper. We have a lineup of great speakers, and 8 minutes is your maximum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the kind introduction. Okay, good evening from South Korea. I'm Kim Heungchong, the president of Korea Institute for International Economic Policy. Thank you for inviting me to this very important session, conference. And then, as far as you know, the Reinventing Bretton Woods Committee has accurately assessed and presented the global trends during the meetings. And then today, I would like to present my views on the state of the economy following the recent pandemic and our response to it, and also the suggestions for international cooperation in a time of fragmentation. And first of all, I'd like to talk about the economic impact of COVID-19. The spread of COVID-19 has forced the majority of nations to limit their travel through their borders, causing a severe crisis in the global economy and trade. And according to the most recent IMF forecast, the shock in labor market and drops in demand will cause the world economy to shrink by 4.4% this year, as you mentioned earlier, which is the worst growth rate since the Second World War. The WTO predicts that the global trend will shrink by 9.2% from last year during the initial stage of the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw the international community respond with unorganized confusion instead of cooperation or a collaboration. Today, I'd like to make 3 points regarding how COVID-19 affects our economies. And the first, the spread of COVID-19 is speeding up the trends of deglobalization. Global economic depression and increasing inequality will likely exacerbate nation centrism and unilateralism even further. And meanwhile, both advanced and emerging countries are preparing stronger trade remedies and other forms of protection measures. We are concerned over the possibility of a vicious cycle forming, where the slowing pace in trade and economic growth leads to unilateral trade pressure against the trade surplus nations, thus slowing down trade even further. And second, the current situation shows how vulnerable the current global supply chains are to communicable disease or natural disaster. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, there were partial disruption to the global supply chain caused, for instance, by the Fukushima nuclear disaster. But the current global disruption to supply chain brought on by COVID-19 is an unprecedented shock. Governments around the world react to the coronavirus by bringing production and consumption to a full stop. This lesson is expected to promote changes to the global industrial structure in a direction where efficiency may be sacrificed to promote secure production and reducing dependency on a few countries and realigning value chains around core industries. In the end, global value chains are likely to be realigned into multipolarized regional value chains as production bases are relocated closer to markets and demand and supply lines or paths are diversified to promote safety. As a result, we expect for value chains to be integrated into regional blocks in Asia, the EU, and North America, centered on nations which possess a high technology or a giant consumption market, such as China, Germany, and the United States. And lastly, under COVID-19, digital technology is utilized to combat the disease, and so-called untapped services are expanding. This further promotes the growth of digital business and industries. The pandemic has accelerated digital transformation and ushered in the area of the new era. This will in turn innovate the global value chain. We can expect new products and services to appear in the online market for products, as well as digital industries such as cloud services, data analysis, education services, or business services. Advanced in digital platform will further integrate the global market, while data, technology, software, design, and other digital services will become the core of new value chains. In the long run, offshore outsourcing to reduce labor costs will be replaced by production that incorporates AI technology. We will see advanced robot and automation technology allowing more business to reshore their operation and shorten the global value chain. Before talking about the Korean initiative, I'd like to briefly share Korea's experience in dealing with COVID-19. The resurgence of a second wave has presented new challenges that see the disease spreading faster than the country is able to cope. Many countries are now facing the trade-off between two hard choices, either containing the pandemic by lockdown or opening the economy to fight the severe economic recession. Korea's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and its expertise in quarantine measures have been receiving international recognition as a best practice in balancing between quarantine and economy. Korea has responded to the COVID-19 crisis based on three core principles, so-called openness, transparency, and democracy from the very beginning. The use of advanced ICT together with the creative and innovative methods like the drive-through screening stations has helped increase the speed and accuracy of testing. All the data collected in this process has been quickly and transparently opened to both the local and international community. Such openness has allowed the government to gain public credibility with an approach not authoritative, but democratic. The country was able to contain the spread of the virus by imposing special procedures for entering the country and social distancing, instead of employing extreme measures like closing the border, the lockdown of cities, or forced measure of chasing application. The Korean government's continued commitment to transparency has also encouraged the public to comply with the government proposed prevention guideline and code of conduct closely and sincerely. So I can see that now the Korea's daily life is something like very usual. As the we can see, we could see, I mean, last year, something like that. We can go to the cinema house, we can go to the park and then restaurants and many other things. Of course, we are now strictly abiding by the principles of the quarantine as well. And now I'd like to introduce the Korea New Deal very briefly. Korea's response to the COVID-19. In the face of the pandemic, the Korean economy has encountered two major challenges, aiding recovery from a severe economic recession while addressing the structural transformation. The unparalleled challenges of the pandemic have completely changed the world's overall economic and social structure. In addition to the increased use of contactless services, accelerating the transition towards the digital economy, there has also been a growing demand for green economy, making it a common consensus in the international community. Delayed actions against such structural changes therefore may hurt productivity and result in a lower growth path. Against such backdrop, the Korean New Deal was introduced as a national development strategy to support the country's recovery from the pandemic crisis into the global action against the structural changes. Its three main objectives are, the first one is Korean New Deal aims to minimize the economic shock by boosting the economy and create jobs. And second, this strategy supports the Korean economy's quick return to the normal growth path by building the necessary infrastructure for a digital and green economy that will restore investment and support job creation. Third, it sets the groundwork for Korea not only to adapt the structural changes, but also to lead the global community in the post-19 era. The pandemic is expected to change people's behavior and perception, and ultimately bring structural changes to economies and society over the world. These structural changes include a rising demand for untapped services, a growing call for an environmentally friendly economy, and rapid labor market changes that within polarization. As a result of such changes, government action is essential to accelerate the transition towards a digital economy, drive the shift towards a green economy, and alleviate the polarization. To this end, Korea plans to introduce two main policies, Digital New Deal and Green New Deal, and overarching policy to strengthen the employment and social safety net. And with the Digital New Deal, Korea's aim to further strengthen its digital capacity based on its competitive edge in information and communication technology, thereby promoting innovation and dynamics through the economy. The government plans to build a large-scale ICT infrastructure, including a data dam, which serves as the foundation for a digital economy. This promotes
Mr. Kim, I'm sorry, we are getting a little bit out of time, so
okay.
Thank you so very much. Apologies.
Okay, and to support the objectives of the Korean New Deal, and the institutional framework will also be improved upon to mobilize the large-scale private investment. So the institutional base for the transition towards a digital and green economy will be prepared along with the regulatory improvement in order to accelerate innovation and additional investment from the private sector. And then now, as the COVID-19 spread, polarization has intensified not only within countries, but also around the world. We need to expand our support to developing countries by expanding ODA in the health and the medical sector. Also to utilize the opportunities presented by the ongoing era, we must reduce the so-called digital divide between demographics and regions. Accessibility to digital infrastructure should be improved for all nations, together with better international cooperation in the area of standards and systems. As I mentioned earlier, Korea has launched the New Deal to overcome the challenge of COVID-19 and adapt to the era of digital information, transformation, and climate change. We are seeing similar initiatives throughout the world. I believe our efforts in this area will produce chances for cooperation that benefit all. Finally, I'd like to conclude my presentation with a note on the uncertainty caused by COVID-19. As mentioned earlier, we are struggling with a lack of in global leadership amidst a global paradigm change brought on by COVID-19. The uncoordinated response measures to the pandemic have brought uncertainty to a higher level than ever. We must counter this uncertainty by restoring multilateral platform based on the universal human value and rules. I look forward to the other presentation in the session and a round of productive discussion. Thank you for your attention. Good.
Thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to give the floor to Madam Antonella Mei-Pochtler, who is the special advisor to the Chancellor of Austria, Sebastian Kurz, and head of the Think Austria Strategic Unit. Madam Mei-Pochtler, Antonella, if I may also, on behalf of all of us, we'd like to express our sympathy over the recent terrorist attacks in Vienna. We stand with you. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much also for inviting me and for having me here and for setting this great topic on the agenda. I think that embracing the age of imagination is exactly what we need, particularly in times where we are challenged on very many levels. And thank you also for expressing your feelings about what happened here in Vienna. Let me just build on what was just said by my presenter. I think that we are challenged by 5-6 different crises. So we have really various layers that we have been confronted with this corona crisis, which came on top of many trends that we knew already. Let me first point out that the major trends, you know, we have seen a major trend towards sustainability, a major trend, or let me say the need to go for sustainability, a major trend, the need to go for more equality, the need to use more AI and advanced digitization, and also the need to make sure that the developing world is catching up. So these were mega trends that we were confronted with. And on top of this, Corona came as an accelerator and a catapult, I would say, just bringing us really a big step forward. And the crisis that it triggered are a health crisis, a demand and supply crisis, and the pre-presenter has pointed to that very clearly, which has triggered again an economic crisis. And we know in the Eurozone, we have quite likely for the whole year a decrease of GDP by 7%, 7 to 9%. Austria alone is around 6 to 7%. We have a global employment crisis, actually. Why? Because on top of what was going on, you know, we had really a reset in terms of needs of skills. You know, we have different skills that are required. And now there were a lot of workers who are in temporary employment, who are unemployed. So we have around 188 million unemployed persons in the world now during the crisis. And the reskilling also going on. So that is the employment crisis. And we have to say we have also a big education crisis. Education crisis because a lot of pupils were not in schools now during the pandemic and where you have lockdowns. And we have a need of major reskilling, which is not captured, fully captured by the current education system. And that is, you know, along this, we have two booms, a debt boom, not yet a debt crisis. The debt crisis may follow, you know. So we have a debt boom. You all are aware about the increase of debt in percentage of GDP and various ways of calculating it. But we have to see in most of the advanced countries, it's 10 to 15 to 20% higher in percent of GDP than before the crisis. And we have a global online boom. You know, I mean, you can say positively or negatively for stationary retailers, it might be negative, but I mean, there is an online boom. So this is something that we need to be confronted. And on top of it, we have a big return to geopolitics. Why? Because the trade flows have significantly changed. And actually, I mean, if we look at the past, we had already, you know, I would say a deglobalization going on, but particularly, I mean, the decoupling is changing a lot the setup of global trade. And we see that the decoupling is continuing to play a role. And the role is very different from the US to Europe, because the US needs to decouple its supply, and we potentially in Europe need to decouple our exports. And I think that's quite a different challenge that we need to do. So this is just I would say the general context of decision making. And in this general context, the question is, how can we follow Churchill's saying, never let a good crisis go to waste? In this case, we have to say, how never let 5 good crises go to waste? And we need to, in the words of Mr. Schwab from the World Economic Forum, we need to build a great reset agenda. And the great reset agenda starts with recognizing that we can solve the problems only in a collaborative mode. There is no way that any country or any continent can solve the problems alone. And we need to work together, and not just in developing testing methods and treatments for COVID, which is working quite well because science is working quite well together. We need to work together on various different levels. The first level is working together, science and politics, much, much more, in order to foster evidence-based working. And, you know, I don't know if some of you may know an article that was published actually many years ago in 2013 in The Guardian about what politics can learn from science. It was scientists protesting that politics was not listening to science enough. And shortly after that, somebody wrote an article, what science can learn from politics. And what this article was saying was the great mismatch in terms of time horizons. You know, when we and I'm in the Chancellery heading a think tank and a strategy unit of the Chancellor, and I'm dealing a lot with scientists. They seldomly understand that we have, for us, the key point is the next press conference, the next communication, which is basically 24 hours later, or in some cases, like in this very sad times, just a few hours after an event happens. So there is a mismatch in terms of timing, and one needs to overcome that. But I think, you know, making sure that science and politics work together in a more cohesive way is very important. We need to make sure that we work together more consistently as nations. I think that Europe has a big opportunity to grow together. The investment in the green, I mean, the Green New Deal and the rescue fund for the COVID rescue funds are just starting points. But I think that we are showing that there is also the willingness to address the things more together, but we need to do it also on a higher stage, so on a multilateral level. And we know that multilateralism has been eroded, and we need to make sure that we reignite that we reinforce that, and also that we think more about minilateralism, i.e. a couple of countries working together on specific issues. And last but not least, I think that we need to harness all the innovations of the Industrial Revolution and make sure that we work in an interdisciplinary way to resolve the various crises that we have at hand. So let me finish up with saying, just we have been trying in Austria to reflect this, and Austria, we are so small that we are anyhow very, very open. We see ourselves as a bridge to Eastern Europe, but also a broader bridge. We have created 2 platforms. We have one platform, the Smart Country platform, where we are exchanging the experience with other countries, mainly, I mean, small and large countries like New Zealand, Denmark, and so on, to exchange now, particularly in the face of the COVID, how we can tackle the COVID crisis, what can we learn from each other. So that is one platform. And within Austria, we created the Future Operations platform, where we are working together with 40 different experts and scientists and bring them together with the policymakers. So let me stop here, and thank you again, and I'm happy then to engage in a discussion.
Thank you so very much. A lot of what you said was both global, but also important regional initiative, and then the platforms, that the insight to that was very interesting, building on what we heard from Mr. Kim before. Let me give the floor now to Mr. Zhu Guangyao, who really doesn't need too much introduction in these circles. He, of course, was in a very important period the Minister of Finance of China between 2010 and 2018, and in charge also of, among other many things, strategic relations with the US. Currently, he is a Chancellor of the State of Council of the People's Republic of China. Mr. Zhu, we are very eager on this very special, strange morning to hear your perspective.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to follow the opening remark by Marc. He addressed the uncertainty. I thought that's a real, very key word. And around uncertainty, I would like to report to you my thought from 7 aspects. I follow your warning with 8 minutes, but I try to very quickly with that 7 aspect uncertainty. Number 1 is a real challenge by COVID-19 pandemic. So far, more than 40 million people be infected, and more than 1 million died. Pandemic continue that's in the as pride, particularly now in Europe, second wave, and in United States. I worry about maybe after Thanksgiving, after this election, after Thanksgiving in US may be very difficult to contend. So how to deal with this disease? And we must work together. I follow that previous speakers, both of you address must be work together, must strengthening solidarity, must be quick action taken. So important because
yeah. I think there's some connection issues. Mr. Zhu, let's see whether we can.
One way perhaps is to go to voice only. So that we, and all of us or all the others take away the video, and then we reduce the burden.
Okay, so my number 2 concern is about the global economy. That's this year, 4.4% negative. That's loss, that's cut. Again,
I think we are getting some technical assistance on site.
Yeah.
Quickly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Shall we try again?
It's okay?
Yeah.
Yes, good,
Okay.
good.
So I will quickly to finish this economy, but I really worry about next year global economy. And according to IMF too, that's they downgrade forecast from 5.4 to 5.2% next year global growth. But if that's situation in various continue deteriorate, I'm worried about whether we can reach that goal. So that means maybe until the year after next year, global economic performance couldn't be back to the 2019. That's a real challenge to whole countries. And this made that any government must take very strong action to deal with the slowdown of economy. So number 3 uncertainty is connected with that is fiscal policy and monetary policy. So far, 15 billion US dollar fiscal expansion by countries already used, and also negative interest rate. ECB is 0.5 negative interest rate. Japanese central bank is 0.1% negative, and the US, yes, is no negative interest, but we can see the 10 years bond yield just stop at around 0.7% if take into consideration of inflation already in negative trend. So that's real problem. Fiscal policy, could we continue have enough room? And how about monetary policy? That's made more urgent need global policy coordination. I think this is so urgent. I really hope either IMF or G20 or some important forum must very quick action. Otherwise, that's very difficult to deal with the challenge. And number 4, uncertainty is the supply chain. And people already discussed that. My concern is that if there's virus continue spread in Europe, in North America, and how we deal with the challenge of global supply chain stability, we must learn experience from early of this year. That's in China, February, March, and that's a real situation, real challenge, global faced. And we really hope there's more policy coordination. And for this one, China certainly would like to take that real responsibility, cooperate with other countries. And however, I do believe the policy coordination, such as the key role by WTO, should be real take action together. And we couldn't continue delay the block or make this WTO no function, including General Secretary election. So that's so important, so urgent challenge we face. This is connected with every country's interest. And number 5, uncertainty is digital economy. It's very good for digital economy development, particularly during the challenge faced by pandemic. And the digital economy certainly play a very positive role to keep long-term education, long-term treatment, and supply role to human being need. That's very important. However, how continue make digital economy develop in a healthy way, including data flow and also how to deal with the challenges now we face, including EU certainly for privacy protection. EU takes the leading role. I think you have general data protection regulation. However, in other continents, still need that more efforts to be developed, and also need global standard. So such kind of very important cooperation already become very urgent. Also, in this connection, the income gap, we also pay attention to that, because that's technology form is very strong and very powerful and very influential. So how make that rational management is a challenge to country. And number six, uncertainty. I think that's a very close connect with the climate change. So climate change is a threat, the whole world, our global common threat. And unfortunately, US withdraw from Paris Treaty and they made that global coordination be blocked. So I think that's this time the COVID-19 pandemic remind us that the environment is so close connect with the people health and connect with the safety of our globe. So that's really need that's global coordination. So that's very urgent challenge too. So I think that's we need some way how to make that back to the normal track. And the last one certainly is a geopolitical issue. And I think geopolitical issue also connect with some countries' domestic risk. And populism really is the base for nationalism. And the nationalism to develop to the utilitarianism. So that's made global coordination, global cooperation very, very difficult. So I fully agree the action we should take, we should back to the right track. And because that's timing. I think very quick, and my suggestion, firstly, coexistence, particularly major countries, should have this real right way. And second, should keep the opening up policy and keep this policy coordination and cooperation. Third one is very important. We should be back to the right track on multilateralism. And the last point should be enhance the dialogue and policy communication. So if that, I think that we can find a way to deal with the challenge, particularly roles uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. That was very nicely rounding up the views of policymakers that we have seen, we have heard thus far from this panel, pointing to true innovative approaches by governments, by central banks, very special coordination of monetary fiscal policy, regionalization, which might become more important. We heard from Antonella about special platforms to be used to tread out new solutions. And supporting, I would add, the digital economy by the governments, by central banks, for example, introducing their own central bank digital currency and the like. There are a lot of additional innovation. I just highlight two. There has been a unique phenomenon during this crisis, that is the convergence of advanced country and emerging market policies. It is the first time in economic history that emerging markets have been able to mount counter-cyclical policies, both fiscal and monetary expansion. And that, in large measure, actually is thanks to advanced country policy positive spillovers, so trickling down of the positive effects. There are many others, but we don't have more time, because we would like to listen to our private sector participants who are bringing from the micro perspective, innovative solutions to this multiple crises, as Antonella told us. First, I'd like to call on Dr. Loubna Bouarfa, who is a CEO and founder of OKRA Technologies. She's a machine learning scientist and an entrepreneur, and particularly working in the health sector. Loubna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Piroska. Thank you, everybody. It's a real honor to be here. And thank you, Marc, for inviting me for the second time to Dialogue of Continent and the Age of Imagination and Uncertainty. I am always fascinated by the power of uncertainty. And that's why my passion for artificial intelligence, that it mimics the way we human learning from the past and adapting the strategy as we move on. And but also imagine a world where there is no uncertainty, where everything is deterministic, without colors in our lives. So uncertainty brings a lot of doubts to our lives, but it also brings color, and it brings kind of mysterious waiting to something to happen that is good, and it brings optimism to our life. So we all agree that COVID-19 came to remind us about many things that are dysfunctional in our relationship to Earth, to nature. In the previous Dialogue of Continent last year in Hamburg, we couldn't imagine that a year later that a smile or a hug will become an act of revolution. We are reminded by nature that if we keep resisting the change, a small, tiny virus is enough for us to change the world. The trends that were mentioned, Antonella, thank you for bringing that up, because I will build on that, on top of that. How can we build on top of those trends that were happening, but we couldn't boost them to really change our ways, whether we are on policy, whether we are running businesses? How can we exploit the power, the force that this pandemic is bringing us to maximize on this transformation post-COVID? As said, and I like to quote you again, Antonella, we shouldn't let this crisis go to waste. We should exploit it and make the inflection point happen across all ecosystems and across all continents. So if you look to the uncertainty of today, COVID-19 has brought this uncertainty to our economic systems and financial markets. The rate of unemployment in Europe reached to 8.3% in September. So if we look to this virus and say it has no borders, well, we saw the virus behaving differently from one border to another. So how can we be united in diversity in fighting this virus? If we compare the situation to the flu, Spanish flu in 1918, where the GDP declined to 6%, we're in a similar situation. But even though, as a machine learning person looking to the measures we use, even though that the GDP is the standard metric of a nation's economic growth, I believe it doesn't reflect the uncertainty in today's world, and we miss the crucial variables representing a country's welfare. GDP cannot pick up the uncertainty. It is a good measure for a volume-based economy, but it is not valid for an outcome-driven, circular economy where we're striving for. It is positively considers the amount, for example, of cars that are produced in a country, but it does not account for the CO2 emissions generated by these vehicles. It positively considers the volume of pharmaceutical pills sold by our healthcare systems and prescribed to our patients, but it does not account for the patient outcomes achieved by those medications. GDP is a poor measure for our economies today. In the age of the fourth industrial revolution, in the age of COVID-19, it falls short in capturing our societal achievements, the uncertainties of our economies, the inequalities and the biases of our societies, and the integrity of our leaderships. So we need to complement this measure with indicators that can capture the socio-economical and environmental dimension of our societies. So the current global situation, the moment is now. we are in this point now. We don't have the luxury to miss this momentum. If we're going to change, if we're not going to change now, it is a problem. So to drive this change by embracing the uncertainty and the complexity of our economies, to exploit the interconnection between all the parameters of our society, healthcare, economics and welfare and well-being. How can we exploit all this together? Technology such as artificial intelligence allows us to do that. It allows us to combine complex data sources and to define complex outcomes aggregated across multiple dimensions. This is the only way we can drive competitiveness in this age at a fast pace, and also accelerate our journey in an outcome-driven circular economy to drive all the outcomes in healthcare at large scale, to eliminate waste and pollution, to keep products and materials in use and regenerate natural systems. So as AI to me is an powerful tool, yet as with all the tools, it's not about the size or the power, it is how we should use it. So I believe there are three key things we should look at, whether we are leaders at policy, whether we're running businesses. There are three key things. The first thing is we need to define the right outcomes. The second thing, we need to look back in the past only when it matters. And the last thing, we need to empower people and don't bypass them. So let me talk about the first thing, defining the right outcomes. So we need to create, as I said, new aggregated measures combining multiple metrics per ecosystem. We would be able to embrace global uncertainties, making data-driven predictions to support our decision-making and drive a value-based economy. We have already many initiatives like the SDGs defining multiple outcomes on healthcare, on education. Also, we have the OECD well-being and life indicators. So can we define together and use data to be able to aggregate measures across multiple dimensions? So this is very important to allow us to be able to drive multiple improvements and advancements. The second thing is about to look only back when it matters, especially in finance sector. AI and those technologies learn from the past and learns from bad examples and good examples. So in industries where we need evidence to move on, like education, like healthcare, we need to use this data. However, in industries where we need to build the vision for the future, like in finance, we should not look back in the past, because what worked in the past wouldn't work by definition for tomorrow. However, we need to build a vision for tomorrow. We need to look to the gaps in today's crucial metrics, the outcomes we defined, and identify where we need to invest and where we should drive these advancements. So working across multiple ecosystems, working across multiple sectors together is very, very important. So for example, just an example from COVID-19, governments has been collecting data massively on measured COVID cases, which in reality, it's good for perception, for human perception, but it doesn't tell us anything about the prevalence of the disease, given the fact that our testing strategy is not consistent. So now governments are moving to collect more, pools of patients to do the testing randomly, which give us more prevalence in data. But that is the shift that needs to happen. If we talk together and say, this is the way, if we want to generate evidence for policy, or this is the way we can generate evidence for technology and for our healthcare system. So we need to do that more. So I believe that data should be collected for the sake of generating evidence, or in order to train systems and algorithms to predict the right outcomes for us, and not for just the sake of collecting data. So the third element, empowering people and don't bypass them. That is a crucial element for bringing any change, whether technology such as AI or whether new policy. We should not forget about people. Empowering people, generating evidence, and adopting sophisticated technology is simply not enough. We need to back this evidence in a way that creates trust and provides actionability. What can a policymaker do with that piece of evidence? What can a doctor do with that piece of evidence? How can we bring actionability to life? So COVID-19 brought many measure shifts, and we during this crisis we have learned that failing to be agile can cost too many lives and too many jobs. So we saw the example in China acting with high speed and accuracy and making that shift, but also we could see that the decisions or the approach that took by China fits within the society, fits with the values of the society. In Europe, on the other hand, our cultural values made us face this pandemic in a different way. And neighbor member states show different responses to the virus. So how can we make this fit, the cultural fit, the human aspects with the policies and the technologies we bring to life? So for workers, we need to upskill them.
Loubna, sorry, just mind the time, please. Thank you.
So I will just close then the speech. So a key question for leaders and policymakers is how we take a more global response while we're focusing on our local measures at the same time, and how can we generate evidence as we move. So I think to conclude, I believe that these three measures, defining those outcomes, looking back only when it matters, and empowering people will be able to boost our competitiveness, create the right policies, and make the right investments. Embracing uncertainty is accepting that not all outcomes are 100% accurate, that uncertainty is there to stay, and we will, by accepting that margin of uncertainty, we can move on. So technologies such as AI are not perfect. It needs bias control, it needs explainability and actionability for the users, but it will allow us and can help us to be brave enough to face this uncertainty in the world. I will end up with a quote from one of my favorite poets: between right doing and wrong doing, there is a field, and we can meet each other there. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Loubna. Thank you for highlighting the importance of data-driven policy decisions. Collecting more data, I would just highlight that there is a very important governance aspect of that. Data is often not shared. So what we see is that governments collect tremendous amount of data, but it's not shared globally. So that global collaboration, again, comes very importantly into the picture. Thank you so much. And then finally, but not least, of course, we have with us Adkins Zheng. He is the chairman and the chief algorithm officer of TCPA, which stands for 1000 Cities Strategic Algorithm. Very, very intriguing. He's a meta-economist and disruptive fintech scholar. You have a presentation and we look forward to it.
Hello to all the fellow panelists and friends. My name is Adkins Zheng, the chairman of TCSA. It is truly a privilege to join you in embracing this new age of imagination. Let us explore the challenges we face collectively and imagine a new way forward. As the second wave of the pandemic rages on now, we all face difficult times together. The monetary policies and economic tools we have employed for centuries are suddenly failing us. It almost seems they can no longer bear the weight of the complex modern world. We must recognize that the pandemic is not the root cause of today's global crisis. It merely poured fuel on a fire that has been burning for years, exposing long-standing systemic risks in the global monetary system. On the central bank level, traditional monetary policy is losing its efficacy. We're seeing massively expanding balance sheets, ultra-low or even negative interest rates, and unprecedented large-scale asset purchases in a bid for economic stimulation. Regrettably, not only has ultra-loose monetary policy yet to substantially improve our economic fundamentals, it has also come at a great cost. Widespread systemic debt risks and economic fragility somehow have now become the new normal. So, what exactly is going on? Why is our economic system so fragile? Why have our economic fundamentals not improved? How can we actually normalize our monetary policies, kickstart our economies, and finally deliver the kind of stability and prosperity the world deserves? In the past few years, and even more urgently in the past few months, these are the key questions on top of everyone's mind. There seems to be one thing we can all agree on, that timely, scientific, and comprehensive data is what's needed to answer these difficult questions. Indeed, we applaud central bank authorities and governments around the world for their commendable efforts in developing data-driven policy tools to pinpoint economic risks and see the economic system more transparently. Yet, unfortunately, these data tools have not produced an effective solution to these problems. For example, traditional semantic analysis of Google search keywords as indicators of economic sentiment, or carbon emissions and energy consumption data analysis as indicators of industrial productivity, or geolocation data from Apple or Google as indicators of economic activity only scratch the surface of the economic forces that shape our lives. Current data collection and analytics models have not yet given policymakers the fundamental information that they really need to make policy decisions in a timely, precise manner. In fact, many central bank governors and political leaders have confessed to us privately that they often feel like they're making policy decisions in the dark based on incomplete, inaccurate, lagging, and often conflicting data sets. For me, the ancient parable of the 6 blind men touching an elephant comes to my mind. The elephant is a complex web of modern human economic activities and the massive amount of data that these complex transactions generate. Just as the 6 blind men used their limited sensations to form wildly different concepts of the elephant, we're currently using very primitive and piecemeal analytical tools to decipher and to triangulate based on massive yet disparate data. In the end, the result is the same. We do not know the true state of the economy, let alone how to really make it all work. Economic data right now is scattered and dispersed throughout the branches of the government that don't share data, that operate in silos, or worse, a lot of these data is often hoarded by the private sector. At best, only 50% of existing data is being effectively utilized to support policy making. And this is possible only after lots of data cleaning, data mining, and data analytics to finally yield some forecasting or nowcasting capabilities. Despite it all, we at Thousand City Strategic Algorithms are optimistic. We see a whole new realm of possibilities for the cost-effective collection and scientific organization of each nation's data to be whole and complete. We have embraced the age of imagination and discovered a potential solution to these problems, a way to utilize data to its fullest potential and create a data crystal ball that allows us to see the fine details of all granular economic forces at play. In other words, a way for all of us to change the world with our eyes wide open this time. Imagine a world where policymakers no longer have to imagine the state of the economy in the dark. In fact, imagine if each central bank can have access to real-time, granular, and comprehensive national scale data. Now, here's what's possible. The construction of a national economic data brain in each country, built upon existing central bank IT systems through which the entire economy's monetary flows, including economic data, physical data, and monetary or financial data from micro to macro levels can all be captured, organized, and analyzed. All of the data in this national economic data brain will be housed and processed in a central bank cloud database with algorithmic ledger structures. Finally, each central bank will transform to become the largest data hub in the country, a data powerhouse that can provide penetrating transparency in order to discern sensible solutions to complex problems. Indeed, this will greatly enhance any country's governance toolkit because for far too long, even way before the pandemic hit, many countries' political parties have already been mired in self-interested controversies and short-sighted gridlocks. In conclusion, precision data is the key. Some say it is a new oil of the digital age. Instead of being dominated only by the private sector, this precious resource, we assert, must be used for a far more noble and egalitarian purpose. That is, to create a truly balanced, sustainable, and transparent new era of political stability and economic prosperity for all people. We at TCSA believe that together we can turn this wonderful possibility into reality, that together we can make it happen right here, right now. Once again, thank you for your time and attention. I wish the conference great success, and I'm very much looking forward to the action-packed agenda for the next 3 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for also being on time. I think we have just a few minutes maybe for a little interaction. We'll Marc at you for your guidance in terms of time.
Yeah, I've just put my video. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have a couple of minutes here. We can take some questions from the audience or comments and, from panelists among themselves.
If you have any questions, please post it on the Q&A function of the Zoom. I would like to maybe ask our policymakers to react to our private sector participants, the data analysts and great advocates of using more data, collecting more data, using more data, getting more information for policymakers. How they see it in their own area to apply to some what you have heard. Antonella, please.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think you read my mind basically, because I wanted to react to this immediately. I think there is an enormous opportunity, and I agree with Loubna and also with Adkins about the potential that we have in data. And I think, when I was mentioning the question about mentioning the need for policymaking and science to work together more closely, I think it has an enormous data implication. Clearly, we need to make sure that we have a trustful and citizen-centric way of capturing data and giving to the citizen control on data, but also to have access to data, particularly for scientific purposes. And to this extent, I think we have the advantage in Europe that we have quite a good data regime that is regulating the use of data. But we are, for example, in Austria, we are currently working on the data availability for scientific purposes to allow more specific usage of registry data. And I think that will improve enormously I would say, the support of decision making. What I'm very concerned about, however, is to have holistic, and I think this is more, I would say, I don't have the solution, but I know the challenge. The challenge is, having a central bank as national sort of economic data brain, I think is an intriguing idea. But the question is, particularly in a European context, if we would have the endorsement by the citizenship to have such a centralized data power. And I think that we need to find, I think having a decentralized brain is probably the direction to go into, where data is clearly, and data usage particularly, is controlled by the citizen. I think that's, the digital twins are part of us. They are not owned, should not be owned by government, by any government. I would say that is a bit, and also not by a commercial company, by the way. Yes. I think that's what is happening today, and regardless, I'm totally sort of open. It could be from any, it would be a US company, European company, Chinese company, I don't care, but it should not be owned commercially. Our digital twin is part of us. And I think that that's something that we need to be recognizing as policymakers, and nevertheless make sure that we have the best data usage, particularly for scientific purposes.
Yes, yes, Kim, please. Just
yes, very short comment. A very short comment on the data. And there are two schools of the data use in the world now. The first is the advocate data regionalization, and supported by the in a sense China and then Europe, GDPR. And the other school of the stream, the way of thought is from the United States and Japan. More liberalizing data transfer, cross-border transfer, and I think that we need to, we need to come together and to talk about this issue, two competing views, and to harmonize the integrated regulation, international regulations on the data privacy and the data the uses, and also the data transfer across the country. And so I think that is one of the utmost impending issues that we need to talk. Okay.
Thank you. Loubna, I see your hand up. Yes, please.
Yeah. Thank you. I just want to bring into your attention that between the public and the private sector, mostly data is collected by the public sector. Of course, who owns the data, that's the question. And then it's used by the private sector to drive insights or to drive some business need. And if we look to the data that we are having today, I don't agree with Mr. Adkins in saying that we have primitive algorithms. I do think we have primitive data. Data that is collected today is not collected for the sake of training algorithms. It's collected for transactional purposes. It's collected for workflow purposes. It's collected for monitoring and statistics purposes, but it's not collected to train algorithms. And that is the big thing that is lost in translation. Algorithms doesn't need to have personal data to be trained. We extract features from those data that cannot be linked to any entity. It could be, it is high level, doesn't mean, if you look with a human eye to the data that is finally fed into the algorithm, it doesn't mean anything for a human from perception. So what I want to say, I think we need, before we start talking who owns the data, where we establish it, what data we need to be collecting, what data can help us train AI algorithms, what data can help us derive evidence for policymaking, for business need. And I think that is the main thing. So when I'm talking, for example, with the European Commission on the European Health Data Space, it's an initiative to use federated networks across multiple member states to collect health data. It's great, but then what is the level of granularity that we're going to collect from those member states? How about the standardization of this data from one member state to another? And that is, I think, the questions that we sometimes forget when we're talking about, how can we leverage this data? Even we might think that we have a lot of data, but if that data is not at the right level of granularity, it doesn't include at least a comprehensive amount of indicators that allow us to train algorithms, and doesn't contain the ground truth, which is the outcome, for example, for healthcare, the response to specific treatment, or for climate, is CO2 emission. If it doesn't include the ground truth, even if it has 10 years of history, it won't be good enough. So I think that is the part that we need to tackle and get there. And I feel like, it can help move our data collection strategy further.
Yes, Antonella, just
I do totally agree with Loubna about this strong differentiation between data usage to direct advertising, which is what data is collected today for, which requires personal information. And that is one of the big issues that a lot of people are confusing, versus data collected training algorithms or for scientific purposes. And that's why we need to, I think you are totally right, we need to be very clear about the use cases for data capture and usage, and based on the use cases define what needs to be done. But in general, I think that data sovereignty in general is a big topic. Data sovereignty, maybe sort of regionalization, but really making sure that there is a clear control about how data is being made available and in which shape and form, with which granularity, with which specificity.
Thank you so much. And we are running a little bit out of time. I'd like to bring one question, if possible, back to the policy arena, because we are living in extraordinary times. I mean, this is almost wartime experiences that we are going through peacetime. It is what Martin Wolf from the FT called an extraordinary global mess. One recurring theme from all of you has been the absolute necessity to cooperate better at the global level, cooperate better perhaps at the regional level, because to leverage the regional political and political economy incentives. So in the last round, I'd like each and one of you to tell our audience, what would be the most important step now? We are after the US elections. We don't know what's happening, but it's very tight. So the situation is uncomfortably confusing, but this is a reality. I'd like to ask you what it would really take, the most important step in your view, to restart, jumpstart cooperation in the private sector, cooperation between private and governments, and most importantly, governments. And I'd like to ask Minister Zhu, please tell us what it would take. And then I would like to have a short answer from each and one of you.
Yeah. I think that after US election, no matter who will be dominate the White House, I think it's time to go back to the multilateralism. And that's including Paris Treaty, including WHO cooperation to deal with the COVID pandemic, and also for trade, WTO. So many things that's needed. The world work together, and also US should continue play leading role rather than just back forward. And that's not US interest. That's not global interest. So it's time back to the right track, strengthening solidarity.
Thank you. That was a very important insight from where you are coming. May I ask you, Antonella, your views?
What I learned from this discussion is we need clearly for this exceptional times to embrace the age of imagination and uncertainty. We need a combination of compassion first, trying to really, let me say the 4 C's, compassion first to really think about what is good for citizenship. We need coordination, much more coordination on many levels. We need consistency of what we're doing. We should not change things all the time. We need much better communication about what we're doing. So these are, for me, the 4 C's, compassion, coordination, consistency, and communication that we need to adapt. And, and going on the direction of the last discussion, I think that we need to define a good way of working together. And I see the role of Europe as a very important role. We are so well positioned between East and West. We are so diverse, and we love diversity, and we want to keep our diversity. So we are much more able to shape a global dialogue. Potentially, as I said, clearly in the multilateral organizations, we are strong believers of multilateralism, but if and where it's not possible, in minilateralism, where we really are setting subgroups of work, and so that we advance things without blocking everybody. So I think that that is, I would say, this is a double, the approach that I think will help us in doing the right coordination on a global level.
Thank you so much. Can I ask if others, Adkins, I saw you moving on the screen.
To answer, first of all, thank you for the questions and the discussions earlier. I think it's very useful for us to engage in this type of open dialogue. And in answering your question, I believe 3 T's will be important in this juncture of our historical collective future. One is transparency. It really, in terms of policymakers' decision-making process regarding the data collected by the government or by the private sector. If we can have transparency, then that's the first prerequisite. 2, with transparency comes trust. The second T is trust. Trusting in your government, trusting in your neighboring countries, trusting in the international multilateral cooperation. To have that trust be present in human interaction will be essential. Number 3, the third T will be transformation. This is requiring all of us to have to take bold actions to cause us to step into the next level of global transformative partnership. So in short, data is a good tool, and how we use it wisely as humanity will propel us to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. Loubna, I see your hand raising.
To answer your question, I believe in ecosystem PPE collaboration, public-private collaborations, that we need to create small expert groups to think about the key things to be done, define the data requirements to be collected in the by the public sector, and also all the requirements around data sovereignty and biases and so on, and define clear outcomes within those ecosystems and the ground truth. So what is the outcomes we will be predicting and driving? I also believe that we need to own our data, to own the data, either as citizens or clear data ownership, starting small and experimenting across those parties, sandboxes, using sandboxes, and scaling, and looking for scaling strategies, looking at Europe, for example, across member states, not only for one country. We want strategies to be scalable. Yeah, so I think this is for me the way to start.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to see? Not, then I think I will be handing back to Marc to guide us through the rest of the conference. And just to say that I think one thing that we have learned from this is the enormous importance of private and public sector collaboration, partnership with all in the face of all the challenges that we have. I would mention also that our governments and our central banks are on steroids with all the risks that it brings together. And therefore, using Antonella's words, putting back the citizenship in the center of all the discussion, be it data collection, be it policy decisions, be it that should be a very important element to tackle all what is in front of us in the context of the COVID crisis. Marc?
Piroska, thank you very much, and thank you for all our panelists. I think I appreciate that you committed your time, but more than your time, your thinking in case to embrace the age of imaginations and also the age of inspiration. I think Antonella mentioned the 4 C, Adkins mentioned the 3rd T, and we will have also a session about the 3 R, reshoring, repurposing, and resilience. So this is indeed all of these interesting questions that we will be discussing over the next few days. At 3 o'clock Paris time, we will continue our discussions. And indeed, this is going to be an interesting session on the new geopolitical order question mark. Here, I'm pretty sure our panelists will discuss the outcome of the uncertainties with the US elections, but also the future of global governance. Vice ministers do mention the need of policy coordination and the need for G20 year to be revitalized. I did recall that in 2008, during the global financial crisis, China played a leading role in terms of stimulating the global economy. This year, of course, the setting is very different because we are dealing with a type of stop and go in global economics. So it's maybe difficult for China at this moment, but I think it will be important to see in the next few months what role China will be playing in being a responsible stakeholder in global governance, as the rest of the world, will be facing major, not only deficit, debt overhang. So I think restructuring international cooperation will be, I think, a big challenge for all of us, but I hope that China can play a role here. So thanks for all of you. So we will reconvene at 3 o'clock Paris time.